Kanwar Singh is a globally recognized as a preeminent painter of Sikh history with artwork exhibited in prominent public spaces such as Virasat Khalsa Museum in Punjab, as well as the new exclusive gallery Without Shape, Without Form, which permanently houses his extensive collection in Slough, UK. His work focuses on the legacy of spiritual devotion and self-sacrifice, spanning the lives of the 10 gurus and iconic Sikh heroes inspired by their deep connection to Waheguru. He captures quintessential moments which over centuries have forged a dynamic Sikh community through its humble origins in Punjab to its present standing as the world's fifth largest religion. The artist continues to build a legacy of work which gives Sikh history a prominent place on the walls of our homes and in the hearts of our future generations. So now without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Kanwar Singh to begin today's presentation.
Okay. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So today, what I'd like to do is basically do a walkthrough of my career as an artist, and more importantly, just getting into the sort of work that I did or have been doing. So, a little bit of background: I was born in Amritsar, and I lived there with my family till about till 1984. But the events there kind of got my, you know, pushed my father to emigrate, and then we moved to the UK, and curiously enough, that's sort of when my art education started. And and since then, I've just sort of been developing myself as an artist. I always knew I wanted to be an artist, but I honestly don't think I really had aspirations to focus on Sikh history or the career that I have now. So it's a very sort of long and winding path. Um, what happened is that after I sort of explored other options, um, or I was set on a career to work in sort of Disney or something, like just as a animator. I happened to just pick up a book on Sikh history, and the thing is, I was raised really with very little contact about my heritage, my past. My parents, when we came to the UK, my parents sent me to a boarding school where I was literally like the only like kid of any color whatsoever. So I was really detached. And I grew up basically not really understanding or knowing much, if anything, about my heritage. Just a few, just the sort of the few stories that we know about, like the Shaheeds and, sort of the real basics of the lives of the gurus, but not much beyond that. And then I graduated university, oddly enough, with a degree in history and still did not know anything about my own heritage. So after all of that, I picked up a book, and just reading one concise book on Sikh history got me just so fascinated. I mean, I just turned page after page and images just kept popping in my head. And then I don't know if I made a conscious decision. I just started to work and try to get these images down. Initially, I just wanted to do it, with no real expectation. I just wanted to get stuff out of my head onto canvas. And that's pretty much how my career started, pretty much completely by accident and without any real direction. I had the tools I needed, and I think I was just waiting for the inspiration. So when I first started working, my initial paintings were very much just in tune with the real basic stories. So, my one of my first paintings was just a painting of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And what I think what was interesting about my development as an artist, especially as a Sikh artist, was that I came at it from such a different angle, in the sense that I had no real preconceptions. So in a way, I was a bit of a blank slate. So I think I was in a way not that affected by existing art or like the lineage of art that we have. I mean, beyond like, knowing a little bit about Soba Singh, literally I was pulling from a lot of different areas and just focusing on the Sikhism as the inspiration. So when I read about Guru Nanak, what really struck me about Guru Nanak Dev Ji wasn't, I mean, obviously I read the different Sakis and all the things that, many of us get to know. But I guess what I wanted to convey in this painting was simply just his act of traveling in his whole life, um, as he was like as he was traveling throughout India and beyond. And the narrative, and right from the beginning, I started clutching onto a particular narrative in each painting. And the narrative here for me was simply just those sort of empty spaces that he would have walked between, like, village to village or settlement to settlement. And I just thought about that sense of companionship between Guru Nanak Dev Ji and Bhai Mardana. So a lot of my original paintings was just kind of like clutching on a thread of almost like what's sort of appealing about this as a story to almost a complete outsider. Um, and that's sort of the way I progressed. I bounced around a lot initially because it was just so much material to work from. And literally, I did 4 paintings initially. The second one I did was a painting of Banda Singh Bahadur. Again, so the narrative there was just the concept of, Savala Khalsa, just the Guru Gobind Singh Ji saying that, one of my Khalsa is worth so much more than the numbers of the opposing enemy. So that was the idea that I wanted to convey in this story. And what I'm showing here is basically Banda Singh Bahadur's like final stand. Um, he had emerged out of virtually nowhere after the Guru had selected him and given him the mantle of leadership, and then within like a decade he'd shaken the Mughal Empire to such an extent that I don't think it ever really recovered. In 50 years, less than 50 years after his time, it almost loses all power and virtually crumbles. um, so initially working as an artist, I relied on more and more of my classical training, and so I approached it in exactly that way. I would work on sketches, and then I would then develop those sketches further into final paintings. And again, for me at that time, all I really wanted to draw on was like historical narratives and things that were like sort of easy to identify as quintessentially Sikh. This is a painting of Justin Akali, and uh, it's when I did this, literally, what's curious about the path I took is that what I discovered is when you're a painter of, say, historical scenes, it's very different than being a painter of almost specializing in almost anything else. For instance, some painters will specialize in portraiture, so they're really focused on sort of the head and shoulders, and they never really have to worry about placing the figure in a background. Um, Other painters are landscape painters, so they don't care about figures and they get to focus entirely on a background that is immersive and you can feel like you can walk through it, like literally a window into another world. Uh, but I found that I had to incorporate or get good at both those things. Get good at drawing people, get good at drawing landscapes, good at drawing animals, and also just sort of like keep an eye that my historical details weren't like too far off, because I quickly found out that the sort of the people that would buy my art initially would, they would pick on certain things. Oh, you got this wrong, you got that wrong. Even if you get like 95% of stuff right. So doing it that way was actually like it proved to be a very sort of a challenging, like a very steep learning curve for me. That coupled with the fact that I never actually learned to paint formally. I learned to draw, and drawing is really the backbone of art. If you can draw, you can learn to paint without too much of a problem. The other way around, not so much. So I had a strong foundation in drawing, and luckily I was not like really good at everything, like any particular thing, but I was a little bit good at everything. So I was able to raise all of these different skill sets, from like portrait element to landscape to learning to draw horses. One of my first clients was literally a vet, and he would just critique everything I would do on how I would paint the horse wrong or anatomy issues. But at the end of the day, the other thing is with art, with what I realized is I just couldn't obsess too much, because there was so much material to cover that I would be working on one painting, and then I had like four banging around in my brain, three or four that existed as sketches, and they were begging for me to move on. So I would just kind of fly through work. Some paintings I would just literally have like just an intense period of, I'd get the idea. For instance, this painting of by Virasat Singh, in it, all I wanted to convey was just the sheer audacity of, uh, you know, uh, a Sikh taking on an armored elephant, and I wanted to convey that sense of speed and just the sort of might of it all. Um, so that's what. So I would do like a sketch like this, get the idea down, and then later on, you get into the aspect of adding color and just like really kind of like forging that painting. And then and what happens when you transition from sketch, you lose something. You often lose something in the speed and the vitality of it, but then you kind of, with color, you get grandness. So in subsequent paintings, there's a lot more detail. Things start to slow down in that sense, like there's just so much more for the eye to fixate on. um, but at the same time, I think like I managed to keep that sense of grandeur. And I mean, in each painting, there was something that I wanted to convey about Sikhi. So as I developed more and more as an artist, I thought, hey, what's the event that I'm representing? Am I representing it well? And then beyond that, what's sort of the concept that I want people to take away from it? And very much right from the beginning, something in me told me that like I want to do art not for Sikh people. I want to do Sikh art that an absolute layman who knows nothing about Sikhi will see that image and get drawn in and ask like 5 questions at the very least. I really see my art as a hook. Um, so what I wanted to convey in this painting was just sense of, how did the Guru elevate a normal man to become Khalsa and to be able to take on such an enormous challenge, to overcome fears, to sort of like, so the elephant represents more than just an elephant. The elephant represents this sort of um, just this mountain of adversity heading towards him. uh, so those are the things that were playing in my mind. The astonishing thing is that right from the get-go, I mean, I started about 12 years ago. I got ideas literally in the first month or two that I still have, like, that are still banging around in my head, and I still want to, at some point, get them out. And so what I started doing in my work was kind of like, just with each new story I wanted to tell as an artist, I just challenged myself, because I'm sort of a bit of a masochist that way, that I just don't like to stay in one sort of comfortable space uh, as an artist. So every time I do a painting, I force myself to learn something new. Um, my background is in Western art. I have like virtually no interest in Indian style art, like in miniatures and such. They're great in the sense of weaning information from them. So I'll often take a look at Sikh miniatures and I look at how well they tell the story, but I don't ever find those to be very compelling personally from a visual sense. In what is traditionally termed as Western style art is what appeals to me. So what I kept doing was, with each painting I did, was kept like elevating, like going like more and more intense with the details, just to sort of challenge myself to almost kind of hit a breaking point where I couldn't go any further. And I think the painting I did of my Pago was pretty much the sort of ultimate in that sense, because it involved such a dynamic flow, painting all, to get a sense of the 40 deserters and going up against my Pago, and she would not let them pass. And with each painting, there's sort of every painting has, and in art in general, every painting has an abstract painting behind it. So which almost renders like abstract art kind of pointless, because all good representational paintings have abstraction behind them. And the abstract concept that I was going for in this is that my Pago is almost, she's like the immovable object. She's like almost a cliff face, and the 40 deserters are like a wave that are crashing against her but not being able to penetrate. So, and then there's just simple visual dynamics, like she's urging them to go the other way. The other way is the way of the light, you know the way they should be compelled to go. Behind her is darker clouds. So it's telling the story of the narrative that should they choose to desert their guru, there is nothing that way that is good for them. So she's urging them towards the light. So in all of the paintings, I try to sort of, I completely ignore what's been done before. I really try not to copy, or like try to even like look through the lens of how was it done before, in a way, because it's very limiting as an artist. And I find that probably one of the more distressing things about um, Sikh art is, like, at least in the time of Soba Singh, in the last 30 years or so, Soba Singh left such a powerful impression that people, young artists, who just kind of keep regurgitating that. And that to me just is not, you can call that something else, you can call that illustration or something, I don't know, but it's not art. Art has to be something, but where you're trying to carve a new space that reflects your generation, your time. And I hope that, like, 20 years from now, people will like do something completely different. Like, that's what makes art really good, in the sense that it's really fluid. So every time I looked at a painting, consciously or unconsciously, I thought about, well, this is the event that I want to show. How can I show it in a way that wasn't? So an earlier painting I did of the main moment where Guru Gobind Singh Ji asks the people who had assembled for the Vaisakhi festival, people that he'd called, and he asked for like them to give who would give their head, and by Dayaji, I believe, who puts up his hand. I've seen that painting done so many times, and the focus is always on Guru Gobind Singh Ji, because inevitably that's he's the most important figure. But in this case, I wanted to show the crowd, and I wanted to show the bravery of the one person putting their hand up, the one person that decided to stand out. And then you frame it in the idea of the mother and father of the Khalsa. Um, so it's just, as an artist, you're always looking for a different lens, because if you go with a different lens, if you go from a different angle, you'll always automatically engage people so much easier, because we sort of get fatigued by all the images we are sort of inundated with, and then as a result we sort of turn off. So I keep the story, I'm always focused on the story, but I'm always focused on how can I take this story that everybody knows or should know, and how can I get them to re-engage with it, to really think about it. And also, how can how do you get somebody who's never seen this story be really like blown away, and get them to focus on exactly the most pivotal thing. So once I started moving beyond just a sort of wow factor of I want to paint this thing or that event. Then I started thinking about, well, I started listening to, just getting more input. I mean, I think I started listening to like even I think one of the first lectures I listened to from Harinder was also about Guru Arjan Dev Ji and the importance of the Adi Granth. And so, this painting conveys sort of that essential thing about Guru Arjan Dev Ji, like helping to assemble the Adi Granth with Bhai Gurdas. It's got that element in it. This painting actually took like several years to do because there was one where my ambition was exceeding my grasp, and it took a while for me to catch up to that. But what I was also trying to convey here was that sense that this was sort of this was almost like the sort of the opening of a new age in the subcontinent, where instead of sort of centuries of casteism and rule by like Brahmanic rule, which sort of like Vedic that sort of they kept the Vedas and they kept their scripts only for the higher classes and excluded everybody else. The Adi Granth is about inclusion. The Harminder Sahib, same thing. The Four Doors is about inclusion. So the script is something that everybody could understand and everybody could partake in. So for me, I saw this one moment in Guru Arjan Dev Ji's time is so like just full of so much splendor, and I wanted to capture that. I mean, Harminder Sahib being newly created, the Granth being like assembled. So more and more my art started to sort of I started to see all these paintings I'd done, and I sort of saw obviously that there's sort of a timeline being developed here. Now I still didn't like go from like year 1450 to 1500. Like I didn't work. I don't do my work in that way where I will like start with Guru Nanak Dev Ji and I'll do a painting of Guru Angad. I literally just sort of live my day-to-day existence, and then I will get an idea and I will just put that down and I will start to develop it. But in my brain, there's always this sort of grand timeline that I wanted to fill in as much as possible. So I I started by sort of thinking about major chapters, so the creation of the Adi Granth, the Khalsa, the forming of the Khalsa, and again, every time I wanna think about what does it mean to me. And the thing about the episode with Guru Gobind Singh Ji creating the Khalsa, the thing that always moved me was that he invested the Khalsa with so much power that he said that you know he became the sixth to be initiated. He bowed before them, and that's so the painting really it reiterates the importance of the Panch Pyare, as well as the Khalsa ritual. So like we have to so that's what I was sort of trying to get across in this painting. And my original paintings are very sort of, I guess they're very light, they're very hopeful. They're really about like something happening in humanity that something that was just great for humanity, something that I just saw as like just sort of a golden age really. And then I moved on to, I think this would have been like in I think, 2007, I believe, yeah, which was the 300th anniversary of the Guru Gadi of the Guru Granth Sahib. And that was kind of like a closing for me of my first phase of work, where I was really interested in sort of representing pivotal moments. And after that, I sort of started like gearing my style in a different direction. But this was probably the painting that had the most sort of ripple effect and got people to notice what I was doing. Um, In this case, what happened was, it's an interesting story. I hadn't done, like, this painting did not exist 3 weeks prior to the celebration, the 300th anniversary, and someone emailed me and they asked me, am I doing a painting? And I'm like, I wish I'd gotten to it sooner, but this 3 weeks, it's not possible. And they made the very obvious point. They said, well, you're not going to be here for the 400th anniversary. Maybe you should try to do something. So I spent like 3 weeks literally not sleeping and just like, you know, just working tirelessly, like day in, day out, just to get this painting done. Um, and I think I literally did it it was released right on that day. Um, so I think at that point it got like a lot of attention for that reason. And then I think people started to like notice what I was doing, and at that point I stopped, sort of like about 5 years into it, doing my work in sort of relative obscurity, and started to get known more. And then sort of also like, and that was sort of a beneficial too, because as I started talking to people and people were aware of my work, it became less and less that the paintings were my interpretations. The paintings then became more my interactions with people. One of the questions I get asked, and I have no real answer for, is, where do you get your ideas from? I honestly don't know where I get my ideas from. Obviously, I mean, I'm inspired by history, but very often I really get a lot of sort of my energy, and I started to, in my direction, from, Sangat, from just sort of talking to people that are, I guess, in a sense, they just have that light in their eyes, and they are so focused in their path to Sikhi. And when I get to talk to them, I've literally had situations in exhibitions where I'll be standing next to somebody and they will do a better job of explaining um, my painting back to me than I could have. Those are the times you wish I had a tape recorder handy. So that's what started happening. And then, so as a result of that, and also my need to always search out difficult spaces as an artist, I started to think more about like doing paintings that were more challenging, a painting that encompassed more than sort of one singular event. So this is a more recent painting, and this painting is the uh, about Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. It's obviously it's about his Shahidi, but it's encompassing literally the whole narrative as you move across it. So on the top left corner, you start from there, and you kind of just see that it describes the age. It's like what Guru Nanak says, the age is like a drawn knife. It speaks to the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb and his sort of military, like using military force to convert and run rampage through India, trying to Islamify the whole country. And it in the whole painting sort of pivots on Guru Tegh Bahadur, but it gives you little glimpses of the story. So as we know, the Kashmiri Brahmins besieged the Guru to speak on their behalf, and the Guru agreed to do this after Guru Gobind Singh said, who's more fit to do this than you, Father? So at that point, as the Guru was going to Delhi, as the story goes, he was actually stopped on the way by um, by people sent by armed men, sent by Aurangzeb, and he was put in a cage with spikes all around and taken to Delhi. So like his torture began at that point. So in the painting you see these bars behind him. So that's just a reflection of that story. It talks about his Shahidi, his unwillingness to be intimidated, uh, and also of the Shahidi of of his three uh, companions, by Mati Das, by Sati Das, and by Dayal Das, I believe. Um, so it's kind of telling that whole story, but it's also telling that the painting is called Guru Tegh Bahadur's Time, and it's really about Guru Tegh Bahadur's moment in Sikh history. And that sacrifice being so quintessential, like so essential to the formation of the Khalsa. So it's almost through him, and you see the figure in the distance, and you see the figure of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, which is sort of projecting what what lies ahead, and and from a narrative, and throughout from the point of our history, the Khalsa would not have happened. None of that would have happened without Guru Teg Bahadur making that stand, and that really defined what the Khalsa would be from that point on. Another thing that really sort of like is always in the back of my head is the idea of like the one light that passes through all the Guru Sahibs. So when I'm doing my paintings, I more and more, that's sort of also the thread of continuity that works through my pieces. So from this point on, I did another painting. That painting was of young Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, or Guru Gobind Rai at that time, when he receives Guru Teg Bahadur cease, and he receives his father. And the idea is, like, I wanted to do this painting in a very different way than it's been done. And I really wanted to speak about the intimacy between the passing of the Guruship, and the literal burden of responsibility that a 9-year-old child had to take on, where his community is literally hanging by a thread, and the decisions he made at that point were to define where we are today. And had he made different choices, Sikhism would probably not exist currently. So this painting was another, just another painting where I wanted to get away from, like, just sort of like representing so I got away from representing. It's easy to like focus on like the high moments, the good moments, and I've started going to the sort of the challenging spaces. And as a commercial artist, there's this, you have to sort of think that, like, you try not to think about the fact that a painting like this will take months to do, and literally no one will buy it, or almost no one will buy it. But it has a different sort of impact. I mean, it's not a painting people will hang up in their living room, but in terms of having people connect with it, creating a response, it creates far more ripples than like a safer painting that somebody will maybe want to put up in their home. It just creates a lot more of, like, I guess it's just a lot more conversation, really, at the end of the day. And as an artist, that's all you really want to do. You just want to invoke as much conversation as you possibly can. I've put this painting in places where I was like, I don't know what the reaction is going to be, like in public spaces, like libraries and stuff. Because we in Canada, we have like Sikh Heritage Month, and what I try to do with Sikh Heritage Month myself is I live in Brampton, but I mostly try to get out of Brampton, because I try to go to those places where there isn't a lot of the Sikh community. I see the value in the work I do as outreach, in terms of sense of like getting people to engage with us, getting people to understand what Sikhism is about. I'm really just not that interested in just sort of like, what do they call it? Like preaching to the choir, as we say. Um, so I've put these paintings up, like I put this painting up in like, universities, libraries. And the great thing is, like, first I had some hesitation, but like, I wasn't sure how it would be taken. But the amazing thing is that it just invokes so much conversation. We did an exhibit in Montreal 2 years ago for Sikh Heritage Month, and it was in Concordia University, where there was so much traffic. So we just lined up all the art in such a way that everyone passing through would have to look at it, and we caused like log jams all day long. And but we got so much engagement and so much interest from people who had no idea who Sikhs were. Um, and we got school kids to come in from local Quebec area, because the Sangat, the Montreal Sangat that invited me, they had a very different mandate than where you have like large Sikh communities. There it's a sparse Sikh community, and they have to deal with a lot of racism and a lot of sort of like just a lot of sort of misinformation, and so they want to sort of create dialogue, and they want to create dialogue with people outside of their community. um, so that's what we did, and they had like, I think like one day they had like 3 or 4 busloads of kids, and we had like over 100 kids just show up all of a sudden, like, and they just told me, okay, you've got to do, you know, you got to do a talk for them. And I was like, this is not possible. I cannot like give a talk to 100 rampaging kids. But the amazing thing was that since I always approach my art in a way that it is as accessible and as readable as possible, we were easily able to divide those up into, groups of 10, where all these other Sevadaras that were just helping just took a group of kids, and then we walked, all of us took our groups of 10 kids or so, and all of them were able to do just as good of a job as I was, talking about the art, talking about the content. And ultimately that for me is like a personal success. There's different ways to approach art or being an artist. There's like, there's this, I mean, on the one side, you can really fall into sort of a pit of narcissism, because that's how society kind of almost frames the artist. It's almost more about the person creating the thing than it is about the art itself. And that's something I've always rejected. Um, Artists are really that interesting. It's the work that they're putting out, and the work represents them, represents what's going on in their minds far better than the individual that you see. So for me, like when I look at great work, I have no interest in the artist. And so I proceed from that point of view. I want to create art which stands by itself, stands is better than whatever I am. And I think most artists should work in that way. And I think the best way to like sort of test that hypothesis is when you can put your work out there, and nobody needs to know anything about you, but they can relate to the work, they can connect with it, they can ask questions. And so that's kind of the framework from which I go on. So another painting. So after this, we're going to talk about some other things, but so I'm nearing the end of what I'm doing with my work. I started more and more to use my art to talk about things that are trickier to talk about. And like, for instance, talking about like the events of '84, but tying it to our past lineage, tying. So I in this painting, I'm both showing the attack on the Akal Takht in '84, as well as the lineage of Guru Har Gobind, and what is the Akal Takht to us, And so for me, like the Akal Takht is more than a building of like, stone and marble or whatever. It's an internal symbol that Guru Har Gobind gave to the Sikhs. It's a symbol of our sovereignty, and that was his intention from the very beginning. So I'm sewing that into the narrative, and what I want to say in this painting essentially is that when you have a symbol like that, that is a symbol of our sovereignty, it will always be attacked. It was attacked by the Mughals, attacked by the Afghans, and it was attacked by the Indian government, and it will probably be attacked again, unless Sikhs aren't going to change the way we are. So that's just a part of what the Akal Takht stands for. So it can be knocked down, but it will always resurrect, because essentially it has the embodiment of Guru Har Gobind sewn within it, because Guru Har Gobind built the first Akal Takht as sort of a pedestal, or as a throne, as which he, where he sat, and he deliberately made it higher than the Mughal throne. And there's other elements in the painting. So in the top left corner, you see like figures standing behind Guru Har Gobind Sahib, and those figures represent the countless shaheeds that have, the nameless countless shaheeds that have like been, from Guru Arjan Dev Ji's time to now, that have basically kept like the principles of Sikhi, that have given their lives to represent Sikhism, to just kind of keep pushing Sikhism forward and not letting it, not letting it die, not letting our ideas sort of like vanish. So it speaks to a lot of those different elements. And then I also use my art to sort of talk about the role of Sikhs in more modern times. Usually I don't actually, the one segment of history that I have no interest in is the segment after the Sikh Empire, and when, when we were subjugated by the British. I particularly dislike too much effort being put on, or us as being subjects of the British. I don't think that's something that anybody should take any pride in. I don't care really about that history. But the way I approached this painting is of Buckham Singh, and he was one of, I believe, 7 Canadian Sikhs. There were very few Canadian Sikhs at that time that actually joined the Canadian Reserve Forces. But the point was, he joined as a Canadian, right? And so I wanted to tell that narrative, that side of the narrative, but I also wanted to tie it back to Sikhi, because if you look behind him, there's a shadow, and it's not his shadow. There's a Baj, there's a shadow of figure, and if you notice, the figure is holding a bow, not a rifle. And the idea behind that it is a reflection of Guru Gobind Singh, and it's about, the Khalsa in the modern era, and that, the prince, like, almost in a sort of a sense that the Guru stands behind his Khalsa even generations on. And then my style has kind of shifted more and more towards, like, this is a very recent painting, and it's a painting of Guru Harkrishan Sahib. So as I said, I don't work in linear ways. I'll go from World War II right back to the Guru era. And I'm starting to work looser and looser, because I sort of want to connect with ideas that step outside of just literal representations. And I want to sort of like talk about deeper concepts. And, I wanted to talk about, like, we know the story of Guru Harkrishan Sahib, where he became Guru at a very young age, and then while traveling to Delhi, he went into a town or an area that was inflicted with smallpox, I believe, and the town people were suffering. So he went to there to give aid to the sick, and as a result of the contact there, he himself grew ill and died as a result. But the painting is also about that kind of cycle of life and death. There's kind of a movement all around the Guru, and let's just say you're starting roughly where the Guru's face is, and you see these figures, these formless, and that's kind of like creation. And then as it swings down, you see like people that are passing through life, and then on the other hand dying, and then this endless cycle of life and death. But some figures are not passing through, but passing into the Guru. And it's that idea of that through the Shabad Guru, through the Guru, that's how we escape that cycle. So that was kind of the idea. And then also, I don't know if you can visually like think of it, but if you turn the painting to its side, like rotated it like 90 degrees anti-clockwise, you would see that the robes look the same way as, when you're sitting in the Gurdwara, and the view you would have of the Granth. So there's sort of like the Angs, the pages of the Granth on the side that you can see there. So that's basically kind of a quick overview of some of my paintings. I've done about 40 odd paintings to date, and lots more that are sort of in the works. Um, and so basically, I worked independently. I did whatever I wanted to, just for the sheer enjoyment of it. I was fortunate enough that I was able to make a career out of it. Because at the end of the day, as an artist, you have to make a career out of something, if you really want to be serious and if you really want to devote all of your time and really sort of get the most out. Being a part-time artist is very, very challenging. Uh, so having done my work independently and then exhibiting independently or working with groups here or there, things are going pretty well, but I still felt that there was just, there was sort of another step to be taken. And, out of the blue, I was contacted by a group in Slough, UK. Slough is in sort of West London, really close to Heathrow. And they're from the Gurudwara, Guru Manio Granth Gurudwara in Slough. And it is an absolutely beautiful Gurudwara, like one unlike any that I've seen, in the sense that there's not a lot, and I don't think there's a single dome anywhere. I think it's very sort of, it's very sort of modern, and I don't know, it's just a beautiful space. Um, and they invited me to come down and like create an exhibit. Now, initially, I've been approached by other Gurdwara, and I usually I don't really get involved. I just say, well, here are the paintings, and here are some write-ups, and they usually just go from there. But this group is very different. They had a completely different vision in mind. They didn't just want to sort of put up some paintings in the Langar Hall that so people could see them while they were in the Gurdwara, or they didn't want to scatter them around the Gurdwara. They wanted to create a dedicated space. They wanted to create a specific reaction, and it was just a really beautiful thing because they insisted I come down. They brought me down there, and when I saw the space they were dedicating to it, like they showed me like 7,000 square feet. This is in London, and this is not like the back of the building. This was the front. This was like right across, like visible from the high street. It's like it's all glass. Like, so when you're walking by, you see the gallery, right, or as they conceived it. And when I saw what they were willing to do, I think my mindset completely changed, and I just said, like, I mean, they were willing to buy the art and everything, but I just said, listen, whatever you're going to pay me for the art, keep that money, and please just put it in the gallery, put it, into extra, whether it's lighting, whether it's whatever, just let's bring it up to that next level. And they exceeded any expectation I had. It was a year-long project. We went through all of my work, and they created a specific narrative. Now, the thing is, as they were looking through my work, I had gaps. And then, so they put the challenge on me to fill those gaps. So I painted like I've never painted before, for about 6 months. I mean, truthfully, I had about a year. I procrastinated for 6 months, and then I really had to get on with it. So for in 6 months, I completed, I think, something like 14 pieces. Most of them were like, well, they were not all complete paintings, but one of them was this painting here of Guru Har Krishan, because they needed to have a representation of all 10 gurus. And so I worked like crazy, but that's all I had to do. That was like the beautiful part of it. I didn't have to do anything else other than to do the one thing I wanted to do, and they got to work on the rest. So after about a year of work, we launched the gallery, and we even with, sort of, to be honest, not a lot of fanfare, because all of us were so busy trying to get the gallery ready that literally, to like, they were hanging paintings the day before, and there wasn't a lot done from a promotion point of view, but sort of word just got out. And when the gallery opened, the first day, it was open for 3 hours, and we counted 3,600 people showed up. And the reason we know this is because we could only let in about 80 people at a time. so that they could like move easily through the gallery. And I'm going to show a video next for about 4 minutes, which kind of just walks through the gallery. And there's a little bit about me talking about the whole experience too. But it kind of shows you the scope. So about 80 people could go in at a time. So we counted, groups of 80, and there was like 40 plus groups of 80 that we led through. And many people, like the lineup was literally like, it was up to, people waited up to 3 hours. I mean, not some people did give up, so we had to like we opened again the next day, and then we got like about 2,000 people, 2,500 people the next day show up. So it was like, to say it was a success would be like just a complete understatement. So now I'm just gonna play the gallery.
Hey,
Uh, hmm,
Kanwar, we have a question from
sure.
Manpreet Chadda. Do you want to take that before we play the video? Is that fine?
Absolutely, yes, that'd be great.
Okay, let me unmute Manpreet. Manpreet, you're on. You can ask your question.
Haji, Sat Sri Akal. This is no, Arinder, Manpreet's husband. She's not on the call. Sorry. Vaji Khas, Vaji Fateh. Excellent work, Virji. I commend you on what you're doing. It takes a lot of determination to make a career out of something which our community does not recognize as a valuable profession. So I really commend you on the path you've taken.
Thank you.
I hear a lot from artists, and we should be. I think as a community we should be moving in that direction. Also, you brought up Sir Sobha Singh, which has polarized the art community for so many years, as this is where Guru Nanak should look, no other way. So do you face any opposition going forward? I see some of your pictures have gurus, Guru Gobind Singh, Guru Har Krishan, and Guru Tegh Bahadur. You painted them in your light. Have you faced any criticism or opposition? It is the Guru di photo kyun bana rahe ho, na di photo honi nahi chahiye. In the light of the controversy of the movie recently about Guru Nanak and all the stuff. So I want to hear your through your lens, what you are going through when you paint gurus with pictures that you visualize them the way they're looking in your mind.
Okay. So yeah, that's a good question. It's I got surprisingly little pushback. I think for some reason, I think we have a bigger problem with I guess video or moving images of someone representing the guru or someone dressing up as the guru. I don't really know where to draw that line. I'll tell you what my feeling is. When like as I said, I came into my knowledge of Sikhi was very much as an outsider. I mean, I was like about like 95% white. Before I just sort of like, weirdly enough, I grew up in Amritsar, but then left that at an early age, and then just grew up in a very sort of like just boarding school around white people, didn't have a lot of connection. So when I read Sikh history, when I read it for the first time, the most compelling parts for me is the lives of the gurus. However, so like you can't ask me to like not use that as a subject matter. That is just the most inspiring and just the most vital part of it. If you take the gurus out of it, yes, you can do paintings of shaheeds and everything, but somehow just the real essence of Sikhism for me is just missing without them. Now, what I do is I paid no attention to how should I paint Guru Gobind Singh. Like, if you actually lined up like the 4 or 5 paintings I have of Guru Gobind Singh, it doesn't even look like the same person. At any particular point, I'm focused on the narrative. I'm focused on telling that story. So, like you can't tell the story of the importance of Guru Arjan's compiling the Adi Granth without showing Guru Arjan. You can't show the importance of Guru Tegh Bahadur's Shahidi without showing Guru Tegh Bahadur. So from my point of view, I feel like we do an enormous disservice to ourselves if we don't like use that tool to tell these stories. And I also think that really, if you think it through, I mean, I haven't seen a lot of people in this day and age that are just bending down and bowing to pictures. I mean, maybe it was an issue in the past, but I certainly don't. I mean, Christianity has been like painting scenes of of the life of Jesus for, from like, 1200 onwards, as sort of as soon as like art gets started in in Europe. And it was always used as a device, always used as a tool. And we have a history of it too. I mean, if you go, you see it less now, but I saw an exhibit last year of gurdwaras from the Pakistan side, and most of them are in ruins. But the most fascinating thing about them is whatever shred of wall that exists, there's a Saki of Guru Nanak. There's something telling you about the lives of the gurus all through these gurdwaras. So you can't tell me that this is something that is not part of our lineage, right? This is not, we have always used a way to like to describe we have used the visual tools in the past. This is not something new. So I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I think it often comes from a bit of a sanctimonious sort of point of view when people say, thou shalt not paint the gurus. For me, I just think it's too vital of a tool to discard for that reason. What I try to do is I really try not to focus on creating a painting that is just an icon. I stay away from the sort of Soba Singh style of just sort of, Guru Nanak with a halo and just sort of blessing, that sort of symbol. I try to show images that are like in every way, like, this image is telling a really vital story of Guru, what I described, Gobind Rai receiving Guru Teg Bahadur's cease. This is a very important story about what that sacrifice meant. This is a story about the vision Guru Gobind Singh had in entrusting the Guruship to the Guru Granth Sahib. This is a painting about the Guru's humility. So for me, I think that's sort of a very overblown sort of argument. And I think in this age, particularly where the image is becoming so powerful with people being addicted to like Instagram and all these kind of devices and these modes of communication, that I personally believe that you just cannot like just scrap all of that and hope to keep communicating Sikhism to people. I don't know. Hope that answers it. Kind of a long.
Okay, so we have a bunch of other questions, but I
Sure.
think we should play the video and then we'll hold the questions to the end. Otherwise, you'll never get to the video in the interest of time.
Okay, yeah, and I'll keep my answer shorter next time.
No.
Okay. Okay, so now I'm just gonna play the video, and just so because I'm gonna go through the gallery afterwards with in detail, but I figure the photos don't do it justice. You really have to see the video. So it's 4 minutes long. So. I've always been very fascinated with art, and I've always been very fascinated with history. I'm very interested in things that are bigger than like personal stories. So at this exhibition, what we're going to be presenting is sort of pretty much my full catalog of work that I worked over in 10 years, in that sort of 10-year journey as an artist, focusing only on Sikh history. And also we've got like 15 new paintings that have been developed only for this project. So it's a lot of work that no one's ever seen before. The exhibition is so complete. When I do exhibitions in other areas, it's very much just sort of the art alone and, you know, maybe a little bit of description. But here, what's been achieved is what I set out to do and how I conceive my art. I don't really see one piece and then another piece. I see a timeline. Some of the stuff that's been created alongside my art as I've been walking through and reading it is sort of been even eye-opening for me. And I feel my part is just to accompany that bigger picture. When you sort of have the image, you also combine it with Gurbani, and then you have the history. It's like it's the three perfect pieces that really give someone a really complete picture of that moment.
Our history is connected to our spirituality.
And I think you're also going to see it in sort of the love and care that's been put into this environment. This is like a really inspirational environment that I don't think it's possible for a person to come here and walk away without anything. I think this is just going to like sort of put a seed that's in people's hearts, and I think it's from all the effort and all of the sort of the love that's gone into this. Okay.
So should I go through the questions? Would you like
Yes,
to do that?
sure. We do the questions and then we can talk about the gallery in a bit more detail.
Okay. Let's see. I have the question from Maninder Singh. What media you use for your paintings mostly?
Oh, okay. So technical question. I sort of work in very different modes depending on the painting. So what happened at the beginning was I was classically trained, and my preferred mode probably have been like drawing and then acrylic paints. But what happened when I started doing Sikh history paintings was that I was constantly having to make revisions. So then I switched to actually drawing on a tablet. And it's the same thing essentially, just you don't have to mix the paint, you select a color. So you're painting on the computer basically digitally. I apply all the same sort of techniques and all the same knowledge base, but basically I do it that way because it just allows me to like be able to like, you know, take the painting, show it to a few people, let them rip it apart, and then it allows me to make corrections and at least kind of navigate the painting to a place which kind of keeps, you know, gets for me what I want to do, as well as what you know, keep people happy that way as well, make it like historically accurate. So yeah, essentially most of the time now I work on a digital platform, but every so often I pull out the paints.
Excellent. I have the next question, and Nawab Heed, I will unmute you so that you can ask the question yourself. You should be muted, unmuted. Oh, okay, never mind, she's self-muted. I can ask her question.
Okay.
It is, can you please create some paintings on contributions of 300,000 Sikh soldiers who fought First and Second World War. 200,000 of them were casualties, in my view, being Guru's soldiers. They fought for truth without any personal or national stake. They fought for allies thinking their fight was just. You consider creating their unanimous spirit for prosperity's sake.
Yeah, so as I touched on this before, I did the painting of Buckham Singh in World War One as sort of a testament to that. Um, I would say that I don't have anything um, in mind per se, but it's definitely something that I want to keep in mind. It's just that space is something that I want to navigate carefully because there is that element of us being subjugated by the British, and it's not really something that I'm particularly as interested in. I really like, I want, I'm focused on Sikh history for the Sikhs, so I have to find a way to do that, that basically satisfies my need as an artist, as well as, but I do see the value of that request. It's not that I'm like opposed to it.
Okay. And I have one actually. And being a god and a proud god, we often think of these iconic heroes 99% of the time. The image is of male.
Yeah.
And generally the depiction is of a male scene, right? So there are so many elements of Sikh history where we see the bravery of Gaurs.
Yeah.
And do you think about that? And I guess personally, I would love to see something like that, especially being a mother.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the mothers who जिन्होंने अपने बच्चियां ने टोटे टोटे करके हार बनवाए, right? So that
Yeah.
scene is always vivid in my mind, but it's
Yeah.
never the pictures that we've seen don't do justice at all.
Yeah. So on that topic again, this is another thing where my art is sort of evolving. When I started, I guess I touched upon those, I focused on those sort of big moments. And yes, they tend to feature, the lives of the gurus and sort of the many of the shaheeds like Baba Deep Singh and Banda Singh Bahadur. So yes, you definitely get a disproportionate amount of male representation. So that's something I'm very cognizant of. I have several paintings that, like, and I mean several paintings, more than half of the paintings that I'm working on currently that are actually focusing on cores, because I made a very like a determined initiative to do that. When the gallery happened, that kind of sort of disrupted that flow because they had specific requests that needed to create this this sort of a narrative, right? So now I'm back on that. So yeah, I have plans for paintings of like the Sikh women in Mir Manu's prison. I have plans of figures like Sada Kaur, who was like, a military genius. There's a lot of paintings, and a lot of them are very far along. One of the things that's happened with the gallery is because they are so ambitious that they are like already they have another list of things that they want done, and they're willing to, like, they've already dedicated 7,000 square feet, and they're willing to knock down more walls. So that kind of opportunity I also have to, like, so I mean, the thing is that the designer actually, one credit I have to give here is that most of the time when I'm working on these kind of projects, I'm sort of the lone art person. And then you have like, 10 people that are like great at Excel or something and great at organizing. But then just, you're trying to push the art side, and then there's just everybody else is sort of an organizer. And in this case, the lady who designed it, her name is Deep Kelly, and she is just a phenomenal designer. She, like, I created these paintings, but she created the direction, she created the flow, she created just the look. She spent a year just looking at every gallery in the London area to get ideas. And she's so like just to the tiniest detail. So a huge part of the success of the gallery was due to her, and that's something she's also requested of me. So we are definitely trying to like work that in now.
Excellent. So we are up against time. Would you like to say any closing remarks before I?
Yeah, sure. How much time do I have?
A few minutes. We
Okay, all right then. So yeah, you know what? I'll just sort of, yeah, I guess there probably isn't time to really cycle through the gallery, but one of the things, all I really want to say is that, like, you know, first of all, you know, as an artist, you really appreciate people who take interest in the work you do. So for that, I'm appreciative of the people that have like logged in today to listen. And beyond that, yeah, I don't really know what else to say. Other than that, you know, like you know, if our as our community, I feel that the arts are so important in our community. I feel like that's just a thing that is really sort of underdeveloped. And I understand why we spend, especially in the diaspora, we've focused on sort of material success and, you know, one or two generations needs to. But I'm hoping that there's just more and more initiatives like the Slough Gallery where we're doing well as a community. And it's time that we started pouring that into institutions that are actually willing to like tell our story, you know? So hopefully that's my departing message.
This is remarkable. I mean, it's incredibly fascinating. And for those of you who are in New Jersey or the East Coast, we will be using, Kanwar was gracious enough to provide us some of his work. So we'll be using that for the benefits luncheon for SikhRI. So come join us there. So with that, let me just, I'm going to go back and share my screen. So with that, we'd like to thank you, Kanwar Singh, for taking the time and sharing with us what you've been working on. It's incredibly fascinating, like I said. Just a little bit about SikhRI. SikhRI connects people with the teachings of Sikhi and strengthening the bond through Shabad Guru throughout the Sikh community by offering webinars like this and other courses and seminars throughout the world through various mediums. So if you, whether you're recently married or managing a gurdwara or interested in deeper learning, there's a workshop out there for you. So please do check sikhri.org/events for events that are coming up. I apologize for those who didn't, I know we were short on time, so the questions that you've submitted, please submit them through Twitter, our Twitter handle or Facebook page, or you can send us an email and we'll be happy to connect you with Kanwar Singh to see if you guys can get your questions answered. So really apologize for that. It's just in the interest of time. As a reminder, these webinars are free, but obviously there's a cost associated to running them through technology and administration. So if you feel that this has benefited you, or this webinar in particular, or any webinars in the past, please do consider a donation to SikhRI or becoming a webinar sponsor. And for more details, you can email us at info@sikhri.org for that. And lastly, please do wait a few seconds. The link for the survey will appear, and we'd really appreciate you providing us your feedback so that we can enhance on future sessions in the future. So with that, I'd like to conclude this webinar. Thank you again, Kanwar Singh, for taking the time to share with us. And I thank you, our e-Sangat, for participating with us. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.